Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome, another episode of Access to Democracy, and we're trying a new subject today. Of all 1,600 interviews that we've done over the years, we have never stepped into the area of audiology. Certainly very, very important for all of us, our hearing. And we're fortunate to have Matt Mattis, and Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
Who is the proprietor of the Hearing Shops, and I think that's 6 locations.
Correct. Here
in the Twin Cities area.
Yep.
Really dedicated to audiology and better hearing.
Yeah, we've got 6 locations surrounding the cities. So we've got pretty good access for people who live in the greater Twin Cities area to anything hearing. We pride ourselves on being able to take care of the ears from start to finish.
Now you have a very circuitous route into this field. You certainly did not start out with hearing shops. You're not an audiologist. Give us a little background and tell us how you got to where you are.
Sure. I'm a sales and marketing guy by trade. I was in the medical sales field with, believe it or not, with 3M in their respiratory division, when a good friend of mine that I'd worked with in the past called and said that he was in the process of being with a company that was putting 5 small hearing aid companies together to form one large hearing aid company, which today is GN Resound, and that they were going to be building a sales force and needed a new management team to come in and kind of take this little company and turn it into a big one. And he called and said, would you want to come over and help manage my sales team? And I said, sure, but I don't know anything about hearing aids or the hearing industry in general. How
many years ago was this?
That would have been 16, 17 years ago now. And I've been in it ever since and love it. And it's a really good field because, as I tell my employees, every day we have an opportunity to help somebody and change their life for the better. And there's not a lot of jobs that you can really do that in. And so, for that reason, it's a pretty good gig.
So when it comes to giving hearing tests and making the medical decision, so to speak, that's not your department.
That is not my department. That's what I hire really good people for. I run the business. I manage the business day to day. I have audiologists. I have hearing instrument specialists that work for us that make those decisions. And then I work with all the different manufacturers as far as the technology goes, pricing structure, marketing, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different approach. In our industry, in most cases, it's the actual audiologist who owns their own practice.
In my experience, that's generally an audiologist, or maybe he or she will have 2 shops. But here we have a marketer, and you've got 6.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a little bit different approach. My years working on the manufacturing side, what I saw was there were a lot of really good clinicians out there. They were great with patients. They did very good with patient care, but they weren't very business oriented. So they really didn't know how to run their practice or grow their practice, or the little things that it takes to make their practice thrive. They just knew how to take really good care of patients. And so when I started the hearing shops a little over 7 years ago, I kind of took that different approach and said, okay, I'm going to run the business, and I'm going to hire the people who will provide that exceptional patient care that I've seen out in the industry, and so that they can focus on that rather than having to be kind of the jack of all trades.
Now, did you start with just one shop?
Started with one shop, yeah.
So you left the people that you were managing the business for, decided to go out on your own.
I did.
Started with one shop, and obviously you now have 6 in a short period of time.
Yeah, I left G & Resound in 2007, and started the hearing shops from scratch. So we get asked quite often from patients, if we're located in other states, because they make the assumption that it's a franchise. One, because of the name, the hearing shops, but also because if they've been to more than one of our locations, they realize that our locations are all the same. We use the same color, the same furniture, the same equipment, the same everything. We want our patients to feel like they can go to any one of our locations and get that same exceptional service that they get from maybe the one that they were at originally.
And where do you find audiologists in particular, to staff your locations?
I've gotten really fortunate. I've been really fortunate. I've got, 4 of my 5 have been with me for almost over 5 years now. So, and I found them through various channels. They either had worked for somebody else before. I got a couple of them right out of school, and then we trained them. We've got a couple hearing instrument specialists that started out working for us in other roles, that we've now gotten licensed through the state, that are now seeing patients as well. So different avenues for getting people, but Alan, this is a people business, and the hearing aids, I tell people all the time, are 50% of the battle. There's a lot of good hearing aids out there, but really it's the person that takes care of you that determines whether you're a happy hearing aid wearer or an unhappy hearing aid wearer. And so it's, we've been through a few people because they just didn't fit the profile of what we wanted. They didn't put their patients first, and they didn't, I say you should treat every patient like it's your grandmother or grandfather. That ensures that they're going to go above and beyond to make sure that the patient experience is a good one.
Now, you said something about there are so many different hearing aids out there. In my experience, I see that to be so. I've seen so many different ones that have been advertised. Starkey, Oticron, Resound, I guess. How many major hearing aid companies would you say there are?
We're basically down to 5 major manufacturers now. There are still multiple brands out there, but what has happened in the hearing aid industry is very similar to what's happened in some other electronic industries. You've got 5 major manufacturers that produce about 13 to 14 brands of hearing aids now. So a good example would be Phonak, which is the largest hearing aid manufacturer in the world now, is actually owned by a parent company called Sonova, and they've got the Phonak and the Unitron and the Lyric brands. So they've got multiple brands that are made by the same company. Resound owns the Resound brand, the Interton brand, and they also own Beltone. So you've got kind of, that's what's going on right now, but there are 5 major manufacturers.
Are there differences between the various companies that these major companies own? For instance, Resound, you just mentioned 3 companies. Is there a difference between what they offer with the 3?
There are. What they typically do is they'll set their products up to take certain niches of the market. So whereas Resound is a good example. Resound would be their premium brand. So that's, they put the majority of their technology and their R&D goes into that Resound brand. Interton would be considered more of a I don't want to say inexpensive, but a lesser expensive brand for them. And Beltone is their retail brand. So Beltone's been around forever. It's between Beltone and Miracle are probably the 2 most well-known names of hearing aids in the United States.
Different types of hearing aids. There is what? In the ear now, behind the ear.
Yep.
What else is there?
Well, that's really it. There's in the ear, there's behind the ear. Now,
Everything
companies,
digitized today. So
everything is digital today. So, I mean, it's the term digital has become very generic. It's like saying I have a gasoline engine in my car. We don't really do any hearing aids that aren't digital anymore. And it wasn't that long ago that about 80% of the hearing aids that we sold were actually in the ear and 20% were behind the ear. That actually has now reversed because of the technology, because the hearing aids have gotten so much smaller, because the fact that we can now fit hearing aids with what we call open fit technology, so we don't have to plug the ear up anymore in order to make people hear better. We now see a reversal in that. So about 80% of the hearing aids we sell now are behind the ear and 20% are in the ear.
It's interesting. How does a person know that they need a hearing aid?
It usually starts with a loved one, a family member, a spouse saying, you need to do something, or you didn't hear that, or why do you keep asking to repeat, me to repeat myself? And so, I always tell people hearing loss generally happens over a long period of time. And so how do you know what you're missing if you can't hear what you're missing? It's usually those around you that realize, when you get into a restaurant, you're not actively involved in the conversation, or you're answering questions that weren't asked. I tell a story all the time that my wife and I were in a restaurant, and there was a couple sitting next to us, and the wife says to the husband, "I'd like some ice water." And the husband looks at her and says, "Why do you want a fly swatter?" That happens all the time, and it's not that he couldn't hear her, but because he's missing just enough of those consonant sounds, which is what we lose first, and that combined with the background noise and competing noise, that's what we start to see is this miscommunication going on, and that's when the loved ones usually say, you really should go get your hearing tested.
And of course, you can get your hearing tested, if I'm not mistaken, free of charge, really.
Yep. Most places, yes. Typically, if you go to an ENT type of office or a medical type of office, then they will bill through insurance or they will charge you for that. If you go to a hearing aid location, then more than likely they won't charge you.
Such as the hearing shops.
Such as the hearing shops. We don't charge for hearing tests, no.
And they take a test which shows what?
Well, we do a few things when we do the test. Okay, one, we're looking for the frequencies that you're missing. So when we talk about hearing, we look at frequencies. So essentially, it's the keys on a piano. So we have 88 keys on the piano. Bass sounds are down on the left-hand side. Mid-range sounds are in the middle. Treble sounds are on the right-hand side. And when we're testing for hearing, we're testing the keys of those piano to see how loud do we need to make that sound before you can actually hear it. And so if you've been through a hearing test before, we put you into a sound booth, so we isolate it and make sure that it's nice and quiet. All of our equipment is computerized now, so we go through the tone testing first, and we play those sounds. We make them as loud as we need to till you push that button, and then you tell us when you can hear it. And we measure that out on what's called an audiogram. Now that's the first part of the test. The second part of the test is a speech understanding test. So we want to make sure that once we know that how loud the sounds need to be for you to hear them, that when we play those sounds, or more importantly, read those words, that the brain can then comprehend what those words are and put understanding to those words. Because what happens over the course of time for people who have hearing loss, especially if they leave it untreated, is that the brain doesn't get that stimulation anymore. And so a lot of times it will forget. It will forget what those sounds are. It will forget what those words are.
And when you're having trouble with your hearing, is it safe to say it doesn't get better over time?
It will not get better, no. It's going to continue to get worse. And that's why we tell people, don't wait. And unfortunately, the statistics tell us that people wait. On average, men wait 7 years.
There's a stigma attached
Absolutely.
to having a hearing aid, even though they're virtually invisible.
There is. I wish we didn't have to call them hearing aids anymore. But we have to, because the FDA says that we have to. But hearing aids have a negative connotation. People think if I need a hearing aid, I'm getting old. And therefore, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I wish I had hearing loss so I could go get a hearing aid.
Well, I have a son who had a rock band.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't take him getting old to start losing his hearing.
No. No, we're seeing it younger and younger. If you look at the music that's being played now through the earbuds and through things, and we've.
I just assume not, but...
Everything shifts. When we look at the baby boomers and we looked at the people in the baby boomer generation that are on the older end of it, we still, at that point, there was still noise-induced hearing loss from their occupations. So, OSHA, when they first started working in a factory or in a mine or something like that, OSHA hadn't gone into full force yet with hearing protection. And so we see people in the older generations that have noise-induced hearing loss from their occupation, from their careers. We're probably not going to see that.
What about the military also?
Well, the
Somebody
military
who's been in combat.
Yep. Well, the VA is the largest dispenser of hearing aids in the world.
Is that right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
And so if you have combat-induced hearing loss, then more than likely you're going to be getting your hearing aids through the VA. But that's the largest dispenser of hearing aids in the world. So that's where a lot of them are going.
What about coverage, though, from your insurance company? My experience is that insurance companies, while they recognize hearing loss, aren't quick to help cover it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Most insurance companies don't cover hearing loss. Now, let me rephrase that. They will cover the cost of a test in a lot of cases, but they won't cover the solution for people who have hearing loss. And part of it, I believe, is because Medicare doesn't cover hearing loss. And so Medicare is kind of the gold standard for what insurances utilize for their policies. And they kind of figure, since it's not covered by Medicare, we're not going to cover it either. There are some insurances out there that do have hearing benefits, and what we always tell our patients is when you call your insurance company, ask them if you have a hearing aid benefit, not a hearing benefit, and they will let you know. Medica has a pretty standard hearing benefit that's a certain dollar amount per ear. UCare has a pretty specific one, but a lot of the other ones are based on the policy that they have, what plan they're in. And unfortunately, about 80% of them don't cover anything.
Now, a lot of magazines and some newspapers, particularly on Sundays, I've noticed, in the local papers, the Twin Cities papers, these big full-page ads that say you can get a hearing aid for $600 or $500, whatever it is, which in my experience is a lot cheaper than hearing aids really go for, a good hearing aid. How can those people do it that cheaply, and is that the way to go?
We have hearing aids that are inexpensive like that as well. But essentially what a hearing aid like that is, it's a very, very simplistic amplifier that will only amplify up to a certain amount. So they're made for people who have a very mild hearing loss, and they're only made to amplify. So one of the things that we say is that louder is not better. Clearer is better. And so when we put people into hearing aids, what we try to do is put them into the hearing aids that are going to clarify the speech as best as we can, at the same time reducing those background noises and noises that are getting in the
ambient noises
the ambient
that really
noises.
cause you difficulty.
Right, and we can do that better when we get into better technology. Those inexpensive hearing aids are essentially amplifiers. They make everything louder.
Number one, you send for one in the mail. That's without a hearing test.
Yeah.
You get something back, it's one size fits all. That can't possibly be adequate to the average person's needs.
Well, in most cases it's not, but one of the statistics that we struggle with in our business is right now in the United States there are 38 million people with hearing loss, and we have less than 11 million people wearing hearing aids. So we do a really poor job industry-wide of getting people who need help to come and see us for help. And so what some of these, what you're talking about are called PSAPs, or personal sound amplifying products. They're not regulated by the FDA like hearing aids are, therefore you don't need a hearing test in order to purchase one, but they're really a one-size-fits-all amplifier. And so they're not going to, if you go into a restaurant and you put one of those on, there are a few that won't do this, but for the most part, if you see one for $59 or $69, they're just going to make everything louder. And so, if you think about you and I trying to have this conversation in a Champs restaurant or somewhere, and we're having a hard time hearing each other, and now we put something in our ear that makes everything else louder,
including everybody else's conversation
and the music,
and the noise
and the
music
television and the dishes clanking. It just makes it more difficult than it does help. And so, but that's part of a problem, because that's a lot of times people's first experience with amplification, because hearing aids are expensive, and I'll be the first one to admit they're expensive. So a lot of people,
When we say expensive, what are we talking about?
we're talking about a good set of hearing aids can run anywhere from $2,500 for the pair all the way up to $6,000 for the pair, based on how active your lifestyle is, and based on
what would be the difference?
The biggest difference really in price is how automatic they are. And so I'll give you a good example. So we have a set of hearing aids that runs around $2,800 for the pair, and they're good hearing aids. They've got good sound quality. They've got wireless built into them. They've got noise reduction. Okay, noise reduction is a big key, because that's where the speech can come through clearly and the noise behind gets reduced. Well, the noise reduction is on or off, and you've got to push that button to tell it whether or not it's going to be on or off.
So you can actually control your hearing aid.
Well, yeah, but you have to control the hearing aids. They won't control themselves. Okay? Now, when you get up into higher technology, those hearing aids not only will control themselves, but they will monitor the environments as you walk into them and recognize what those environments are, change all by themselves. So you put them on in the morning, you take them off at night, and you let them do all the work in between. That's really what you're paying for when you get up into higher level technology. It's not the size, it's not the style. It really is about those automatic functions and how smart the hearing aid is at adapting to those environments all by itself.
Now, you just introduced something new within the last couple of months. What was that?
It's called Lynx. It's made by Resound. It's the first made for iPhone hearing aids. So the hearing aids have MiFi built right into them, so that they will actually talk with an iPhone, an iPad, or an iPod without any intermediaries. So there's no loop that you have to wear. There's no clip on your jacket that you have to wear or anything. They literally. So if you get a phone call, your phone call will go right into your hearing aids. Your iPhone now is the remote control for the hearing aids. So you can, if you get into an environment and you want to make them louder or softer, you do it right on your phone. If you want to change bass or treble, you do it right on your phone. It's got some really neat features in it. It's Find My Hearing Aids. If you lose your hearing aids, you can literally track them down with your iPhone right within a foot. So again, it goes back to why I'm not happy that we still have to call them hearing aids, because they're more communication devices than anything before, but yet we're still forced to call them hearing aids, and then people say, well, I don't want to get hearing aids.
Well, like everything else, technology is changing so fast that, it would be ludicrous to assume that hearing aids technology doesn't change as fast as technology does.
Yep, yeah, they're changing dramatically. What we've seen in the last couple of years is a lot of the manufacturers are now starting to accessorize the hearing aids. So, they continue to get better as far as the sound quality goes, as far as the size goes and all that. But now what they're doing is they're making products that go with the hearing aids. So, they've got wireless built into the hearing aids now. So we can, a good example is we have set up a sound system at the Old Log Theater out in Excelsior. We've set up the Resound's wireless system there. So anyone who wears wireless Resound hearing aids can now have that sound streamed directly into their hearing aids anytime they go to a musical or a show there. We've done a couple of events out there.
That's certainly a big innovation.
It is, because think about, it's almost like wearing a set of headphones and listening directly to the play or the show right in your headphones, but all you're doing is wearing your hearing aids and just putting them into streaming mode. So these are things that we've never been able to do before, that we're now able to do because the technology allows us to do it.
And is there financing available for people who want to get hearing aids?
There is. We offer multiple options. Again, like I said, we realize hearing aids are expensive, and the last thing we want to do is have people not hear better and stop living life the way they want to live it because financially they can't afford to purchase hearing aids. And so we do interest-free options. We do up to 60 months payments. So yeah, we try to do everything that we can.
And that's important for people,
It is.
particularly today.
But it also helps too, because we had a gentleman who came in and he needed hearing aids. And when we were asking, well, what do you do? Where do you go? He said, well, my biggest thing is my TV. I want to be able to hear my TV better. And he was he knew he needed hearing aids, but he just couldn't justify paying for them. And so when we got to talking to him, I said, well, so I'm assuming that, you just watch regular TV with an antenna on your roof. Oh, no, I've got a satellite and I get all the channels and I get all this. Like, well, how much does that cost a month? He says, well, it's $149 a month. I said, so you pay $149 a month for a TV that you can't hear, but you're unwilling to pay $129 a month for hearing aids that allow you to hear the TV and much more. Sometimes you have to be that direct with people and make them realize, you know what, it's not about you can't, it's about prioritizing. Does your hearing matter? And again, because the hearing goes over such a long period of time and most people don't know everything that they're missing, they don't necessarily put it.
How long does a hearing aid last?
It'll last. Most people say they look for new hearing aids every 5 to 6 years, but it's not because their hearing aids break. It's because either their hearing has gotten worse and they need something that gives them more power, or the technology has changed enough to where it's time to look at something new. But we had a lumberjack come in with a couple weeks ago with 12-year-old hearing aids, and they worked as good as they did the day they were brand new, but we couldn't turn them up loud enough for what he needed anymore. So
What about batteries? How long I know almost all of them run on batteries.
They do.
How long does a battery last?
battery will last anywhere from 5 days to 20 days, depending on, number one, the size of the hearing aid and the size of the battery that's being used. So the smaller the hearing aid, with the smaller, a size 10 battery would be the smallest that we have, is going to give you less battery life than something that uses a size 312 or a size 13. We use zinc
We're
air
talking
batteries.
about tiny little batteries.
Tiny
though,
batteries.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, they're little. They're zinc air batteries, so they've got little tabs on them, and the minute you pull the tab off, they get activated by that air, so they're working the minute you pull the tab off. So that's part of the issue, is that you can't really ever, although you can turn the hearing aids off, you really can never turn the battery completely off.
That will come in time, I'm sure, like everything else.
It will, and we get asked all the time, when are you going to have rechargeable hearing aids? And we will. Eventually we will have rechargeable hearing aids, but the problem right now we have is that with the battery technology we have right now, the only rechargeable hearing aids that we have really that will work are nickel metal hydride batteries. But the best rechargeable batteries are lithium batteries, like that are in phones and toys and
catch fire in airplanes.
Yeah, well, that too. But
We've been talking with Matt Mattis, and our half hour is already gone, and there's much more to talk about. But the hearing shops,
yep.
do yourself a favor. If you have a problem, contact Matt Mattis and the hearing shops, and take care of your ears. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, that went fast.